Hello and welcome. Today I'm going to show you a property feasibility calculator that I've built. And this calculator will show you the difference between buying a property and doing an investment of the same value. And we're going to look at all the different variables with these two. And then you can decide for yourself which one is better. While I'm running through this calculation, you will see a lot of assumptions that I'm going to use. I'm using the real data from the economy, property growth rates, and rates and taxes increases and rental increases according to actual statistics in the current market. So this is an actual example of a client that requested that I do this calculation. So the property value in this case is a 2.8 million property. The transfer bond and attorney's fees up front is 153,000. Although there's no bond, if there was a bond, the cost would have been around 203,000, so it's slightly less. The bond value or the upfront cost value actually reduces the property price. The reason why I do that is if you didn't have to pay that upfront cost compared to an investment, that value actually is a sunken cost, and it's a opportunity cost that you lost. You could have invested that money elsewhere, but in this case, you've given it to the government for transfer duty and for an attorney to do the transfer. There's no loan, no interest rate, no amortization or anything in this case, because this is a cash purchase of this property. The rates, taxes, and levy and insurance are 4,500 Rand. And this is given to me by the client in this case. You can see the rates and taxes is 2,500 Rand. The levies is 1,600 Rand. And the insurance is 400 Rand, totaling 4,500 Rand. Let's move on to the further assumptions. Property growth rates per annum in this case, 3.2%. This is given to us by the Lightstone Property Report, which measures property growth rates in South Africa. This is a national average. I haven't even considered maintenance cost. If you look at the double asterisk here, I explain it here on the right-hand side. I haven't even considered that you do spend additional money on maintenance cost if you buy a property. And this can be an assumed lower growth rate, because money you would have spent on the property maintenance in an investment, you probably wouldn't have spent it on maintenance, because it's purely an investment. The rental increase per annum is 4.2%. So this figure is given to us by market research, which I'll put over the screen right now. Then levy rates and tax insurance increase per annum. This is more or less the inflation figure. The inflation currently in South Africa is 6.8%. But we're going to assume a slightly lower increase here. What we must caution on is the 3 asterisk caution that I've put here. And that's that a municipal failure and maladministration in South Africa is quite high. And that might cause rates and taxes from municipalities to increase over time to recover and kind of build up funds to fix potholes and all of these kind of things in your suburb. And another thing is the levy figures in South Africa might go up higher than inflation due to a lot of crime. So if your house or this property that you want to buy is in an estate, I find that estates spend more and more over time to secure the estate, and this might cost you more than inflation over time. But we'll keep it at 6% for this calculation. Right. Now, this summary here that I've highlighted shows you the cash in hand after a certain amount of years. Now, why after 10 years do we see a 2.9 million Rand value in your pocket only? Let's look at the details of this case. Okay, these gray areas represent each year. So here you can see is 12 months on the left-hand side, and you pay 4,500 Rand in costs, which accumulates to 54,000 Rand in year 1. Remember, you've paid 153,000 Rand upfront cost for the property. So you've already lost that money, plus you've lost 54,000 Rand basically. That's around about 200,000 Rand that you've lost. The property in the meantime have grown from the lower 2.6 million to the 2.7 million. In other words, we've already deducted the 153,000 here that you've paid up front. So when we look at selling a property, a lot of people consider selling a property only as the sale price, and that is the profit they've made, without considering all the costs that goes into buying and selling the property. Let's go down to year number 10. After 10 years, the property will be 3.6 million Rand, and you will have 2.9 million Rand in your pocket. Okay, the 2.9 million Rand is before CGT, in other words, before capital gains tax. In this case, we're not going to use capital gains tax because you have a 2 million Rand capital gains tax allowance if you live in a property, if it's your residential property. So why only 2.9 million Rand? Once again, let's look at this figure. You've spent 711,000 Rand over time on levies. Okay, so that's a sale price, 3.6 million. As your property grows every year, and you've spent that money, and that's 2.9 million. So 2.9 million cash in hand that you've received over the 10 years. Let's look at the 20-year figure. It's 2.9 million Rand cash in hand. Okay. Now you haven't paid rent. In other words, you've paid levies, you've lived in this property. So it's important to note that if we do an investment as a comparison, then you are going to pay rent. So in this case, this client was offered to either buy the property or pay 20,000 Rand in rent, which is kind of market related for a property of that value, depending in which suburb, but that's kind of a good measurement. We're going to go to the investment example now to see what it can offer you. We're going to compare it to these figures right here. Okay, here's the investment example. Important, the client invests 2,953. Why is it more than 2.8 million? Because if the client had 2.953 million, they would have bought a property of 2.8 million plus 153,000 Rand in costs. So that's the actual money in the bank that you would have put down to start your property purchase or to start your investment. In this case, we're going to assume a 10% growth rate on this investment. And the investment example we're going to use is an endowment. Why an endowment? An endowment is quite a good investment for long-term growth, and especially if you're in a high income tax bracket. But we're not going to get too technical now. What I want to explain with the endowment is that we're going to calculate the figure after tax. In other words, we're going to say, right, this client invests the money into this endowment or into this investment. We're going to deduct the taxes. Taxes assumed, after you withdraw the investment. So, if you don't withdraw an investment, that's fine. Your money will be slightly higher, but we're going to assume the tax after that because we have to make a snapshot of if you sell the property or if you sell the investment. If you keep the property or if you keep the investment. If we keep the investment, the investment case study will be slightly or even better than the property. We'll see what the outcome is now. But we're going to assume the after tax rate, plus we're going to deduct all the rent that the client would have paid in this case. In other words, in the first instance, the client purchased the property and didn't pay any rent. In the second instance, the client did an investment with the money, but where's the client going to stay? So we're going to take the 20,000 Rand a month rent, and we're going to deduct that off the investment value to give it a fair chance of competing. This 10% growth rate that we use here is before taxes, so it's very realistic. Okay. So here's the investment case. Let's look at the 10-year figure. After 10 years, the investment balance will be 7.6 million. It's a power of compound growth. If you look at on the right-hand side here, the cumulative growth. In year one, it's only 295,000 growth. Then it's 620, then it's 977. And it builds on this balance. You'll see your cumulative contribution because the client is not contributing monthly, only contributed in the beginning. And after about, you can see after about year 7, the client doubled his money. And after about year 8, you can see that the growth received on this investment becomes more than the actual contributions or the initial contribution made. So let's stick to the year 10. In this case, year 10, the balance is 7.6 million. Right, let's look at the client's rental payments. The client pays 20,000 Rand per month. If you agree, that's 240,000 Rand per year. You can see it right here. And here on the right-hand side, this column, you can see the accumulated rent. So in year 1, the client paid 240. In year 2, the client paid 250,080 after the 4.2% rental increase. And once again, this is a market-related national average rental increase that tenants are owners or landlords are currently getting, property owners. So here you can see the accumulation build-up. After 10 years, the client have already paid 2.9 million Rand in rent. Now, that's a lot, right? But the investment value will be 7.6 million on the left. So let's look at the investments after tax return. On the right-hand side here, you can see year 10 has been carried forward. So after tax, it's about 7 million Rand or 7 million Rand. So 7 million Rand minus the rental that has been paid over 10 years, 2.9 million, is 4.1 million Rand. So in effect, you'll have 4.1 million Rand in your investment, even considering after all the rental income that you've paid. Okay, it's quite important. Let's see what it is compared to the property. Property after 10 years is 2.9 million. Okay, let's look at the 20-year figure. After 20 years, your actual investment will be 19 million Rand. Now that doesn't mean it's an actual money in your pocket. We'll have to take that into consideration on the right-hand side here. So money in your pocket will be the following. Here you can see your rental paid over 20 years. By this time, you're paying already 524,000 Rand per month, per annum on rent. You've paid 7.2 million accumulated rent so far. I mean, that's a lot. Let's look at this. Your investment, personal endowment after tax, you'll be on 17 million. So you'll pay 2 million tax if you had to withdraw the 19 million. So it's 17.8 million. You've paid 10 million, you've paid 7 million rent. The total cash after rent and after endowment tax will be 10 million. So you'll literally have 10 million Rand in your pocket after 20 years versus the property. You'll have 2.9 million Rand in your pocket. Sounds crazy, right? Now, that's real figures. Okay, let's say you are slightly more positive on the property outlook in the future. So let's assume you're going to get 4% return on your property. And okay, rental increase doesn't matter in this case. Let's say even 4.2. That's 1% better than current returns. And then after 10 years, you're going to have 3.2 million. After 10 years, in this case, you're going to have 4.1 million. That's after your rental income has been paid. Your rent has been paid. And after 20 years, you're going to have 10.5 million after rent and tax. After 20 years, you're going to have 4 million. Yeah. Let's do this. Let's assume you do the investment, but your landlord, the economy does well, and your landlord manages to push your rent up by 5% every year. Let's make it even 6%. which is very difficult for landlords to do. Landlords can't easily charge 6% per annum. They will either lose a tenant, in other words, they will lose you. You might find another place, or they will have to keep it lower. So after 20 years, 4 million. After 20 years, you still have 9 million. Let's change some other assumptions. Let's assume you get 6% return on your property. After 20 years, you'll have 6.4 million. After 10 years, 4 million. Okay. After 10 years here, you'll have 3.9 million. So it gets a bit closer. Okay, in this scenario, the property becomes a better option over 10 years. So 3.9 million. You've got 4 million. After 20 years, you've got 6.4 million. After 20 years, you've got after 20 years, you've got 9 million. Okay, so the investment does much better after the 10-year period. Okay, let's look at the 5-year period, 3.1 million. And in this case, 5-year period, 3.2 million. Okay. So property must do quite well. I mean, haven't seen these property growth rates easily in South Africa lately. There are pockets of excellence, but be careful to be too optimistic with your property growth rate. Please put any questions or comments in the comment section, and please like and subscribe to my channel. And the next calculation that I'm going to do will be the rental income comparison versus doing an investment. So buying a rental property, this exact same property we just discussed, versus an investment.